but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters. It's Friday night, which means it's the Three Amigos night, and I'm joined as always by Mitch, Steve Hasty, and we've got Keith Patterson back by popular demand, and plenty to talk about tonight, lads.
Just a bit.
God, I go away to London for 2 days, and all hell breaks loose in Newcastle United's Twitter sphere. Unbelievable. Keith, you're in the driving seat tonight next to me. What did you make of what's happened this week? Because ultimately, it's just been a story after a story after a story, and you know, some of it's been positive, some of it's been negative, but a lot of it's been conjecture, a lot of it's been make believe, a lot of it's just been throwing, you know, dead cats into the media to take your eye off other things. I mean, in a nutshell, try and sum up this last 7 days.
Last 7 days started with a club shop. I think that was an internal move by Frasers / Sports Direct. I don't think the reference in the letter, which I got a copy of, quoting the buyers, was genuine or sincere. And I think the buyers would be wanting to say that the first thing they'd do if they joined the club wouldn't be to make redundancies. So I think it's only fair that we say to fans, you know, the buyers wouldn't do such a move. So when that came up, that there was flags flying there. But I think the letter was genuine. People have been to the club shop this week, and it was, inverted commas, open as normal. They were putting stock out. So that started everything off and started getting it rolling. When you see the copy, it says about new owners need to be in by the end of this month. So it set, you know, cans race, and it set everybody on the way. Next thing that came, which had more value, was Musgrove's letter, which is the freedom of information, because that letter, when you get something from freedom of information, becomes evidence. So even if people knew Oliver Dowden was keen to back the separation argument, to get it in writing from freedom of information is admissible in court. So we'll talk about that as we go through the show, but that was of more value because the freedom of information predominantly hit on three things. That the uncharted waters for the ODT, which was no surprise. Musgrove's admission that he agreed with separation. And there was a third thing in there, which was the Grand Old Duke of York, which spoke volumes for how glib and how arrogant the EPL are. But it didn't surprise me. It's what I expected to hear. But I think it's good because if that's played in an arbitration and that point's brought up, I think it'll set the tone for how they view Newcastle United and a takeover for 305 million. Next thing was MBS and Boris, and that did the rounds, and we'll talk about that. My feeling on it is Boris denied it, MBS denied it, and I think there's a lot of mischief. But I didn't see any negatives in it, even so some people jumped on it and said, you know, the takeover's dead if he's really done that. He's not PIF and they are separate, so that didn't worry me. Next thing was the anti-Saudi people seemed to jump out. They came from all over this week. We've got one woman who hadn't tweeted for 6 years, put a tweet out about the rights and wrongs of human rights, and there was a lot of that stuff come out. Steve was involved. And then, you know, you come back to the big thing, which for us is probably the only thing the fans can do at the minute, which is shout for 3 points on Saturday. So I think that sums the week of where we've been. There's other stuff as well to come out, and there's an account turned up today I've seen with an ex-club official coming out, which has had suggestions of whose account it is. But there's all kinds coming out. It's been a mad week, and there's been people lobbying for the closure of the club shop, and then complaining if it gets closed down. So like there's some no one's there. No, Mitch, I was talking to you, Mitch, during the week about that.
Yeah.
You know, so we've got a lot to talk about. But in a nutshell, I spoke to Liam last night, Liam Kennedy, and he turned around and said that he thought that it was pretty much a stalemate. Well, I answered him back and said that I have a different view. I think there was a lot of good come out this week. The case come back into the press, and above all, we've got freedom of information, some valuable things. So good week, I think.
Good week, says Keith. Steve, would you agree?
Interesting week, remarkable week, remarkable in the amount of information that's been flying around. Not remarkable in the normal world of Newcastle United, however. I think I'll roll it back a couple of days, Keith, and a great performance as well in the second half, or in 5 minutes of the second half, where we actually picked up 3 points for the first time in God knows how long.
Yeah.
Even though the manager thought it was the second time we picked up 3 points in a week. What can we say about that? Maybe that I'm sure we'll be discussing that as we move forward as well. But, yeah, a fascinating week. I mean, this is the fact that everybody's still talking about it. The story is still out there. The national press are going to use the name Newcastle United to make stories stick to anyone, whether it's sticking to Boris or whether it's sticking to David Cameron. And that, I mean, who would have imagined, 12 months ago, that Newcastle United Football Club would be linked to everything from Cash for Questions to lobbying, and whether lobbying should be allowed or not allowed in the UK, parliamentary sleaze, all of that type of thing. And then you get London press guys throwing Newcastle United into the mix for good measure. And it's the Daily Mail. And nobody reads the Daily Mail in the Northeast anyway. So it's just a weird week, Steve.
Front page.
Yeah, weird week indeed. Mitch, what's the take being out there where you are? I mean, obviously you've watched from afar. I know you and Steve have did some interviews for Radio Newcastle this week as well, trying to make some sense of it.
Well, it is. You're trying to make sense of an absolute avalanche of information. To get so much out this week, it almost feels coordinated. It almost feels like something's going on. It really, there was just a massive volume of stuff. I mean, from the as Keith said about the letter, we've all seen that letter, and the letter is not ambiguous in its wording at all, and I find that quite curious. Why somebody at Frasers Group would be that specific, to even name a date. It just is bonkers. And then I've got to say, I'm well chuffed for Andrew Musgrove. Yeah. For that hard work he did there. He's a good lad. He's good old fashioned journalism. You got to remember, this is the lad that was stitched up on a Chronicle podcast by Ben Jacobs that had to be then pulled down. And I know that hurt Andrew a lot. And I know that hurt Andrew a hell of a lot. So to see him come back in the last few weeks, he's won an award for the Black and White, Everything in Black and White podcast, and he's then come up with some fantastic old school journalism to get some really useful, proper information that, as Keith rightly says, when you've got some of those things in writing, it's not just evidence; it's damning. The grand old Duke of York phraseology is just pathetic, and it just shows exactly the attitude that they're taking towards the entire takeover. So that's great. And then we've gone from being a geopolitical football to being a political football. And being bounced around on this sort of and tied in with, can you lobby or not lobby? That's effectively what this is about. And people saying it's good or it's bad. I mean, at the end of the day, heads of state do lobby for business to be done with other heads of state. That's not unusual. And again, it comes back to, or we're looking at this from a separation point of view, whereas there's something bigger going on, and there's something bigger going on with that, and we just happen to be handy to chuck around, and again, only Newcastle United could bump Prince Philip's death up the page on the front page of a bloody national newspaper. Only we're capable of something as bonkers as that. And that's been this week. It's been bonkers. Out here, it's been interesting. I was connected via a local, well-respected sports journalist to somebody more business-based in Saudi. And we're going to have a few more chats in the next couple of weeks. And they were unimpressed with the story about saying that MBS would directly lobby, and that's not the way he does it, and that's not the way he goes about things, and so certainly the phrase I was given, I think I shared with you, was tread carefully, and that the story quote unquote smelt a bit whiffy, which it just has this feel of that we're being used again in a political game. And this time, it's not a geopolitical game; it's just a political game. It's maybe we're in the UEFA Cup of geopolitics rather than the World Cup or the Champions League of geopolitics. But still, it's a pain in the arse to be used like that,
Yeah, it is. You mentioned Ben Jacobs. He's back on the show this weekend. So Sunday morning, if you're an early riser, set your reminder for 10 o'clock. And I'll be doing a Q&A with Ben 10 till 10:45 before he goes off and does his match day commentary. And good to get Ben on. His reactions and to questions last time, his answers to questions last time were good. He seemed to be a popular guest, so we will get him back on for you to ask him a few questions. So, Keith, club shops, let's start with that. You mentioned that at the top of the programme. We all saw the letter. It all got circulated around you, me, Steve, Mitch, and a few others got one. And we all had a look at it. We all read it. And, I mean, my first impression was this was just Mike Ashley being a businessman and doing what Mike Ashley does, which is if a shop's not making money, close the bugger.
I agree with that, but I don't think we Mike Ashley. I think we'd be at a level below. I mean, the letter was signed by somebody called Moody, who looked as though he was a regional manager at Frasers Group. And I think at the end of the day, they'll all be driven by targets. I think the way he salaries everybody is on performance. I think that's well known. So you've got people performance driven. You've got a shop up there that's not going to get any busy Saturday trades or any busy football game trades because it's not going to trade this year. His opinion is the club be sold before football fans are allowed back in the ground in numbers. So basically, that's a shop that's gone through the furlough procedure. And whether you agreed or not, if you were even a middle exec at Frasers, you'll be targeted with performance figures, and you'll have figures on every shop in the Metro Centre, Eldon Square, throughout the country. And when you look at Newcastle shop, you'll say, well, that's not going to trade. I think I got told the staff was 40 something to run that shop. It's like a lot of people. So if the shop has got to return back to the club ownership, which is what I've been told from good source, before the deal can be done, and if the suggestion is right that Castori is going to get to run that shop, it's going to be where we previously had an Adidas shop and a Puma shop, it's going to be their brand, then it tells me that there's nothing in it at all for Frasers or Sports Direct to keep it. So anybody would have said that was low-hanging fruit if you're trying to save costs. It's bad for the people that works there, but I think they've been made redundant if they get made redundant, in a role from Frasers come Sports Direct rather than Newcastle United. And I think the only pushback that the buyers don't like is that they're, if you like, are implied that they've given a date of when they want to take the shop over. So I think from someone like Murdad and Amanda sitting there loyally waiting and patiently waiting for this to happen, I think if they had a voice tonight, they would say, one, we weren't involved, and two, if we were involved in the takeover shop, the last thing we'd be doing is redundancy. So from their point of view, I think it's wise that they get that voice to all the fans to say it didn't have their blessing or it didn't have their involvement. I think it's a better way of putting it. But I think it's just been a middle to senior manager move, and then the Frasers Group was saying to somebody, close your non-profitable shops, which is what happens when you take over a group like Frasers. You don't keep non-performing shops, and that's not going to perform in the lifetime of it because it has to return back to ownership to Newcastle United. So, no brainer for me.
Yeah, Charlie Insomnia, good name, mate. He says, given a short time to prep for next season, possible COVID impacts, do the lads think Mike Ashley, if he is confident of the takeover, will initiate some of PIF's mantra plans? For example, was the shop story part of this? Well, like Keith says, Steve, we don't feel it was. Certainly hasn't got PCP's fingerprints on it because they don't own the club. This is simply Mike Ashley and Frasers and just standard procedure. And if Castori are coming in and going to be the new strip sponsor, they're probably going to use that shop.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all know how Mike Ashley operates. He gives his area managers or his managers the opportunity to manage, and he gives them targets, as Keith says. But what he does is he says, go away and make me money. And he challenges people, and people challenge him back. And he, if they come up with an idea and they think that they can drive that idea through and it's going to work, then he'll go with it. Now, you look at it in one respect, you look at it from the Sports Direct perspective, and you look at it from that area manager's perspective. He's got a stall, as Keith says, it's not making money. It's shortly going to be closing anyway, or it's shortly going to be moving on with new sponsors. So the new shirt sponsors, so it's going to have to be rebranded. You're going to lose Puma. There's going to be some time out taken there. We also have the issue that the club is potentially going to be sold. So if the football club gets sold, it's not going to be Sports Direct's problem anyway. So you've got an area manager there who's gone, you know what, we'll take advantage here. We'll make some changes. I'll put it forward. It'll cost Sports Direct X. It'll save Sports Direct Y. There you go. Bang. Now that does give Newcastle United another part of Mike Ashley's empire. It does give the executives there who run Newcastle United a bit of an issue in the short term. But as far as that area manager is concerned, that's not his problem. That's the problem of the person who runs Newcastle United. That lad doesn't run Newcastle United. He runs his particular area of Sports Direct stores. So he's on a high. He's taking the gamble. He's saving the money. He's turned around to the manager or to the owner and the executives and said, "This is what I propose. This is what it's going to cost us. This is what's going to save us." And they've gone bang. Then it gets handed to Lee Charnley. And it gets handed to his executives at Newcastle United. Gets handed to the team that look after whatever department the club shop is then handed back to, and says, "Right now, okay, now we've got a headache. We've got an empty store. What are we going to do with it?" And it's then a case of them saying, "Right, well, we're going to have to offer it to Castori. We're going to see what sort of deal we can get there." Remembering, of course, that Newcastle United as a football club were getting nothing from Sports Direct for the use of the store. So I very much doubt they were getting massive rent provided. But this is an opportunity where perhaps Lee Charnley and the rest of them at Newcastle United could then go, right, okay, well, we've got new sponsors coming in. So from our perspective, we're bringing a little bit of cash in. And I'm just speculating here. I'm just playing devil's advocate on how it works and how the chimneys that operate in Newcastle United. So cause and effect. Problem created, problem resolved for one guy. Immediately problem created for somebody else down the line. But Mike Ashley's then, he's sitting there going, okay, well done, son. You've solved that problem. Now it's St. James's Park. Now you've got a problem. Tell us how you're going to resolve that one. And the resolution is short term. Well, we've just let it go, Mike, because the potential is that the club's going to be sold. Medium term, if the club doesn't get sold, we've got someone who can come in. We've negotiated with them to refit the store, and it's going to be there. And long term, when you do sell the club, there's a value to that store, and it's there, and it's now operating, and we've got punters going to be coming through the door. So happy days. That's the way that Mike operates. That's the way that his brain will be ticking on. He just gives people the opportunity, go and make my money, go and make business decisions that you think are sensible. And you know what? The people who feel sorry for at the moment are the people who are working in the club stores, people who have been made redundant. The question then is, okay, are those people then going to be re-employed or taken back on in some way, shape or form? And we'll soon find out, won't we?
Yeah, we will. Tom's asking Mitch, if MBS lobbied for the takeover, does Luke Edwards have a point that this weakens the claims that PIF is separate to Saudi state? Genuine question, as I honestly don't know.
No, like I said before, it's not unusual for heads of state to discuss big business deals and for them to lobby for large companies on their country's behalf, as it were. So it doesn't really, in my opinion anyway, it doesn't strengthen the argument of separation, but I don't think it weakens it or changes the situation. That argument of separation is it comes back to why the Premier League take that attitude that there is no separation when many other legal bodies, and let's talk about the WTO for example, who were the one dealing with the Qatar piracy claims, they state early on in one of their documents that there is clear separation between state and PIF. So, I think one of the questions that should come out of the stuff that Andrew Musgrove dug out was, you can use some of that towards, well, hang on, You've got somebody here who does recognise separation. So why don't the Premier League? So I don't think it weakens it for me. I can see why people would say it could weaken it, but I think that's it. And also, both Downing Street and Saudi Arabia are denying that this ever happened anyway. So I think there's that to chuck into the mix too.
I mean, my personal view, I've said it last night, is it's a political football. You've already used the terminology in a roundabout way. And, essentially Newcastle United's takeover has just been used. David Cameron's been accused of lobbying. What's the best thing to do? Find out another little bit of lobbying that, will get on the front page. What can we use? Exactly. Oh, yeah, let's use Saudi because that's a one that gets on the front page. That'll take things away from looking at David Cameron. Looking at Prince Andrew going to this funeral when he possibly should be speaking to the FBI. There's lots of things which are coming out over the course of the next 6-7 days, and they've all just get covered over by Newcastle United. Keith made the point. Newcastle United. Steve's made the point on the front pages for this. It's ridiculous. It really is. There's a lot more things going on. Things we should be knowing about. I really, really couldn't believe it. It ties in as well. I'll stay with you, Mitch, for this. Zubair inboxes on Twitter. He says, we've got many journalists reporting on stories with regards to the takeover, either not happening or not happening until September. He says, how can they know this? Could the information be getting leaked through the consortium of the club? What's your thoughts on that, Mitch? And then I'll go to Keith.
I think there's lots of people taking lots of stabs and putting their own spin and interpretation onto the information as it stands. I do think the Premier League leak. In fact, I know the Premier League leak. We know the Premier League leak. We all know. And I could probably even, well, exactly. I could even probably have a stab at a couple of names. I know, and I know certainly if we go back to Benzaya Group, they were convinced that the leaks to the journalists that went up to Mike Ashley at the Champions League final and said, "Oh, I see you've agreed this deal," that came from the Premier League. They were convinced that it came from one of two sources, and one of them was the Premier League. So there's no doubt that happens. But you've got to remember, if they're leaking, they're going to be leaking things which put a positive spin on them and their argument and to their timeline. I think if there was leaks from the consortium side of things, would be more positive than that, one would imagine. And so, yes, there are leaks, but you've got to look for where the agenda is on those leaks and who they're leaking to and why.
Okay, same question to you, really, Keith. I mean, it's what people want to know. People want to know what's going on, but there is a lot of leaks. A lot of people saying one thing and another. I've said on the show before, it's clickbait. A lot of it's clickbait. The people want you to click on the story, get the advertising, revenue in for their particular newspapers. And, we've mentioned every journalist on here, from Culkin to Edwards to Musgrove to Ryder to our very own Liam Kennedy, and we've covered them all on here. We've tried to be fair to all of them. Some are better than others. Some literally just to put the first thing that come into their head. Some have lost the plot completely and are arguing with fans and winding fans up. We had that incident 12 months ago with Miguel Delaney, where me and him went hammer and tongs at each other. So it's not just local press; it's national press. And they can only be doing it for one reason, and that's because they know Newcastle fans bite, they know they get some interaction, they know they get clicks on their article, and they know they're going to get more followers.
I think everybody's guessing at the minute. I think when I speak to the club don't know the outcome that some of the journalists are printing. So there's stuff going in there. And if you read 3 articles together, you'll see they all contradict each other. So 2 of them's got to be wrong. And only one of them can have any truth in it best. And what you probably find is there's bits of truth in each article, but it's all guesswork. And so people who've been talking to me over the last certainly 3 or 4 weeks, they've been getting told, people are saying, I want to refresh Twitter every day, and I've said, don't bother. I've told fans, there's a girl come on, said it's chilled me to bits. I said, walk away from it. Leave Twitter for a week. It'll still be when you come back. So I think it's all clickbait. I think that people don't know. What has come out is the club were desperate to make this public. And I don't know if you saw, but over the last 3 or 4 months, a big part of what I was publishing was in that line. I was publishing what would help the club, which was transparency. Which I was trying to get everybody to make it expedited. That was the words I used: expedition and transparency. And expedition is because the club want it quicker. Mike actually he's spending millions, so obviously he wants to stop that. The buyers are very, very keen to be in. We all know that. Us four know that back to front, that they would be there tomorrow if the club was available for sale. But it's the transparency that the club have spent 6 figures on, trying to go to court and get Beloff removed as a chairman for not divulging information, but also to get the club fought in the public domain. There's 2 reasons for that. One is because the club feel that if it was fought in the public domain, the public would overwhelmingly come down their side because they would see what they're not allowed to show. And secondly, they feel as if it was made public, the EPL will fold. The EPL wouldn't want, and we've seen lots of imagery on Twitter this week where people are putting washing out in public. And I don't think the EPL want this in public. So there's always been a feeling that the EPL might bottle it before the last minute. But the longer it goes on, the less likely that is to happen. But I can't imagine that the EPL can take what's coming at them. And me and Liam talked about this today. He said, "What will be on the other side? What will the EPL have?" And I said, "Well, they'll have a barrister that will tell you Nick DeMarco is no good, and they'll have a barrister that isn't frightened about Shahid." But what you've got to do is you've got to look at 3 things in this to get confidence. One is Mike Ashley is absolutely, whatever you think of him, he's an expert in not wasting money if you can avoid it. You cannot take that away from him. He does not throw money around if he doesn't need to. And secondly, and some will argue he should have thrown money at Bruce to get rid. So secondly, you've got to sit there and say, well, Shahid Fatima is probably the best voice on the area where Mitch lives, MENA, Middle East, North Africa area. There's probably not a better QC in the UK that knows that area back to front. And he's very confident that she has a resounding argument on separation. When you add to that, the highest person in British sport, who's Oliver Dowden, agrees with her, and it's public, it becomes a strong point. And I'm thinking I'd rather be on this side, the EPL's. And the last point is Nick DeMarco. He's one of those people. He's a bit like a Premier League player. It's like De Bruyne. Do you think De Bruyne would leave Man City and go to a club that wasn't going to play a Champions League? They don't do it because when they're in demand, they are wanted by people and they pick and choose the cases. And top QCs do that. And Nick DeMarco has a bit of a reputation of not having been beat. He's the football man in Britain. He's the top man in Britain in this game. And he's picked this case because he thinks he can win it. So when you put Ashley ploughing millions in to Shahid Fatima's skill set, you then look at a team that's probably going to win it. In the meantime, for all that power and money, they've gone to the Premier League and said, make it public. And the Premier League, the courts have ruled it absolutely stays in confidence. And that's why you, me, and everybody else cannot publish anything. And that's why it's going to stay private.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good stuff, Keith. Great stuff. The one thing that people enjoy about this show is that we do tend to make things a bit clearer for people to understand. Bearing in mind it's our views, but we do have good contacts. We do have the people on both sides of the deal, and you're getting it from the horse's mouth as best you can. So at least we do try to send the message out in layman's term and not mislead anybody. A lot of people in the chat talking about the poster. Credit to John for this, like absolute classic. John from Jab, he did an absolute belter. I came up with the idea. He does the wonderful graphics, and yeah, well done, John. You've certainly cheered a lot of people up this week. Brilliant. I think people are expecting Steve to come up with a rendition of "Hole in My Shoe" at some point tonight, from what I can read in the chat.
You know what, Steve? If he had asked, he wouldn't have needed a Photoshop. I could have found him a photograph that looked like that anyway. You know,
I've seen the photos, Steve. I've seen the photos. Absolutely brilliant. I'm just going to go and smash the back door in when I finish the show. Anyway, it's my tribute. I'll run through the wall or something. Billy Gaddis, Steve, he says, "Evening, lads. I've read on the internet some of the fashionable clubs like Liverpool, Spurs, Man United, and City wound into the Premier League to stop the takeover. Do you think there's truth in this? I mean, it's something we covered. God, it seems like 20 years ago, but this is the kind of stuff we were talking about last year, isn't it? Where, you know, the big six, this is where the whole big six came from. And, you know, I think what came out of Amanda's article when PIF withdrew was that essentially, you know, Tottenham had a major reason. You know, George Colgan did an interview with Amanda, and Tottenham seemed to be against it for a multitude of reasons.
Oh, Steve, absolutely. You know what? I mean, we had Tottenham, we had the project Big Picture that was doing the rounds at the time that they were all involved in. So that involved Liverpool and Manchester United. As you say, you had Tottenham, and I listened to an interview the other day. I forget who it was, but he was saying, "Oh, it's absolute, you know, the usual sort of, you know, this is typical Newcastle fans. They're trying to create something out of nothing here. There's nothing to see. There's nothing to hang your hat on. That's an absolute load of rubbish. The fact that, you know, that it's a democratic Premier League. There's, you know, the project Big Picture got voted out because it needed 6. You know, it's the 14 votes, etc., etc. Absolute rubbish. You know, they come out with that type of stuff. At the end of the day, there was 19 clubs contacted. 19 contacted by the Qatari TV company BN Sports. They didn't contact Newcastle United, but they contacted 19 other clubs to lobby them. There's that word again. You know, so there was undue influence coming from clubs, and certainly from the Big Six. And you can see from the way that the Big Six have involved themselves in the European Super League and this newly revised rendition of the Champions League, which is going to turn around and say that, you know, some clubs are guaranteed to play in it because they've been there before. All of that type of thing. You know, this whole idea that football is a democratic, you know, organisation and that they're all out there looking after each other. They're not. They're looking after themselves at the end of the day. And they stick together when it suits them. And it certainly suited the Big Six to stick together, to stick the knife into Newcastle. Yeah. To stick the knife into the takeover.
Definitely.
And it probably suited some of the others within that. So, you know what? Influence. Let's leave it at that, Steve. We all know that they've stuck their nose in. And as you say, we'll be talking about this last year. Yeah. And we're just repeating ourselves.
Yeah, Mitch, it is. We're going round in circles, but you know, once arbitration is concluded, we'll be a step closer. And you know, you just wonder. I think a lot of the fans are wondering: is all of this week, all of this noise, because we're coming to some kind of end? But in the chat, you're seeing everybody talking about Steve Bruce talking about him being here next season. I mean, you know, the reality of the situation is he could still be here. Mike Ashley could still be here. Newcastle could be a Premier League club. Steve Bruce could still be manager going into the start of the new season.
Well, like Liam Kennedy said in his article today, you know, in some respects we have got to try and ignore the noise. There's one thing that matters still at the moment, and that's securing Premier League status. And then everything else will happen as it's meant to happen. It does have that feel, though, that there's so much happened. It's hard not to feel that has some of this been put out because something's moving, something in the background is going quicker than we realise. But it's difficult to say. We should really only be trying to focus on the football and grabbing the points that we need for safety, and then what will be with it. But I certainly see the thing I've seen this week is we are going in circles.
Yeah.
I've had discussions and conversations with people this week that I've had on numerous occasions already, and I'm now seeing people who were telling us that we were wrong about certain things now saying the things we were saying 6 months ago. and it is what it is. You know, we knew that Saudi officially had walked away, but they hadn't. You know, we knew that we'd be back in a heartbeat with a clear path. And there's an article being written today about, they'll be straight back in. Yeah, we told you that. We told you that 6 months ago, and you told us we were stupid. You know, it's these kind of things that are popping up again that we've already discussed at length and in depth. And you know what? Because I'm a gobshite and I love Newcastle United, I'm quite happy to talk about it at length all over again. And then some. And stick a year of experience on the top and additional information we've picked up along the way. You know, we're all still really, though, trying to put together a 1,000-piece jigsaw, the Mona Lisa, without a picture to copy from, and it's missing a piece of the nose. You know, that's what we're trying to do. But it is frustrating to be having the same conversations about the same things over and over again. But I guess that's just the nature of the way that this is going now, the way certain information is coming out. I'm still stunned at some of the language in the freedom of information stuff that Andrew Musgrove got. That's for me is the biggest thing of the week. Is some of the language in those things that have been released, and some of the attitudes and you know, when we were saying around June that there was a decision imminent. You know, there's an email there with that phrase exactly in. There's an imminent decision, possibly tomorrow. You know, wow. And so what's changed? And you come back to all of that. And again, these are questions we've been trying to answer for the last year, it feels like.
Yeah, it's true. Anthony Brett, Keith says, just wondering, is Keith disappointed on the movement at the takeover from early February, where he was fairly confident of something happening in a few weeks?
I was disappointed because I didn't expect the delay in applying to get the chairman struck off. But when I found out that the chairman had withheld information, confirmed that he'd worked and acted for the EPL previously on matters to do with the ODT, I think it was a necessary must. So, you know, I was always told and under the impression that, you know, we'd come out of the new year fighting. January was going to be big, February was going to be busy, and the end of March was always a target date. And you've got to remember, people are spending millions on this, so they don't want to keep on indefinitely spending money. So you've got to plan for this, plan for what's coming. But we literally lost all of February and all of March on a six-figure case plus substantial legal costs, you know, 7-figure legal costs to get him struck off, and it didn't work. The one thing they did do is they put a marker in his camp to say, we're watching you, and you know, we know you've acted for them before. So I think there was goodness in doing that. But the second thing it did was it showed the world. Can you remember when the EPL told NUFC that they would love the case to be made public? Well, that made a mockery of that, didn't it? Because Newcastle went to court to try to prove that it should be made public, and EPL fought against it. So what that can prove to you straight away is anybody that heard that in the NUFC meeting is the EPL are just blatant liars. And in a court case, you've only got to prove somebody to be a liar once. It's a big thing. I've fought some cases where we've consumed millions of pounds. And the QC said to me, one case I fought, the legals on both sides was 50 million. And they said that the only thing you've got to do against an opposition in any court case is prove them to be a liar once. So for a simple thing there, Masters went to NUFC, had a meeting and said, we would love this to come out in public. We've got nothing to hide. We'd like it to come out. Now, if that evidence could be collated and that was played, if it was relevant, and they said, okay, Masters, why then did you fight Newcastle in the courts in March 2021? to stop it being made public. And the reason is because they're disingenuous, and that's the posh word for liar.
Yeah, I like it.
Steve, you've just rattled through a load of comments and questions, and there's 3 of them I can actually give some answers to. I don't know if it's worth. Aye, the one where it said about Castoria, are they connected to the Rubens? There's no evidence connecting to the Rubens at all. There was one comment he made in an interview with Rangers, actually, where he denied Mike Ashley's involvement with Castoria, where he said one of the investors were one of the wealthiest families in the country who like to keep their investments private, which could be the Rubens, but it's certainly, I don't believe it is, and there's no hard evidence that it is at all. Second one, somebody mentioned about Tupi in the club shop. That's actually clearly stated in the letter that Tupi is not being invoked by the new owners, so it's not happening, but it was mentioned in the letter. And the third one was about the takeover, would it sail through if we were in the lower division, and they mentioned Derby and Ipswich, for example. Now, them two, obviously BZG were involved with a disastrous attempt at Derby, but the Ipswich one, there's a name connected with the Ipswich one, the Turkish gentleman called Berker Bakke, who's a part ownership of Phoenix Rising in the US, amongst other things. And he was actually one of the partners with BZG when they were trying to go for Newcastle. That's a name me and Steve have bandied around for 18 months. It seems like everybody's finally getting their football clubs. So yeah, would it sail through with the EFL? Probably, because I think they'll let Stuart Donald buy Sunderland with none of his own money. So would it sail through? Probably, but we don't know that for sure.
On that very point, sorry, go on, Steve.
I was going to say, talking about the Tupi, the reason why new owners, in inverted commas, are not invoking Tupi is because A, there are no new owners, and B, the shop is being handed back as a vacant lot to Newcastle United for them to decide what they're going to do with it. Yeah. So until Newcastle United decide that they're going to get it fitted out and they're going to do a deal with Castoria, which they haven't announced yet, there is no Tupi that you can, because there's no transfer of undertaking procedure that can happen. So this is where the letter falls down, isn't it? This is where the whole stuff that Keith was talking about earlier about new owners wanting to do X, Y, and Z. There are no new owners. There might not be any new owners of Newcastle United. All that's happened is the vacant lot, the patch that Sports Direct have been sitting in under the stand in the Gallagher end has just been handed back as a vacant lot to Newcastle United for them to decide what they're going to do with it. Now Newcastle United have got to go down the line. They're going to have to find someone to take it over, and they're going to have it refitted, and they're going to go into the negotiation. And from my point of view, what I'm saying is, it sounds like, as I said earlier, that one part of Sports Direct, one part of Mike Ashley's empire, the guy's done the deal. The other side, it's like, okay, now it's somebody else's problem, and now that person has to solve that particular problem. And that's where he operates, and he goes, good on you. Now you show me what you're worth. Right. It's a game to him, and it's a game that he plays, and that's the way that he operates.
On what Mitch said earlier, you said earlier about Mitch about the question of if we went down, would it be easier? And I did a little bit on that. And the question I got told was, if you make an application as an EPL club, right, so they've made a court case, and imagine they'll have spent millions on this court case so far. Mm. If the season ends and you get relegated, I'm told that court case will continue. The other thing I've been assured of from good sources that the EFL, which is what we're talking about doing, drop the EFL, even though we won't. If you go to the EFL, their whole ODT, if you like, was upgraded about 15 to 18 months ago in line with the EPLs. So somebody's told me that whether you go in EFL or EPL now, it'll be one and the same. But I think because Newcastle started a case in the EPL, you'll finish it with that court case. You would never get a case in British law where you started a case, and for example, if your company went bust, you would not finish it. As long as you had that monies to continue the court case, they would continue it in that court with that judge, with that legal team, and you'll be against the same opponent. They wouldn't then say EPL parachute you out, EFL you go and take the case on now. That couldn't legally happen.
Keith, we've been asked to put Karen's picture up there. I don't know whether you can see it. Hi, Steve. Can you show Keith my honorary profile picture? And there's Karen kissing your face, Keith.
Can't see it.
Yeah, it's just at the side. Our profile picture there, Karen. Can you see it, lads? Just at the side there. It's blended into
the bottom corner.
Bottom corner, yeah. Bottom.
Christ, oh, man.
It's a classic game. This what John does. All of this kind of putting heads on photographs and stuff. It's definitely catching on. You've started something off, John. Okay, as you know, we always have regular features. It's time for the first one. Yes, every week Mitch does Tune Lookalike, and I got sent one this week, but I will go with Mitch's first, which is this.
There you go.
Who's that?
It's Brian Kilcline, and it's Ron Perlman when he was in the TV series Beauty and the Beast in the 1980s.
Yeah,
Beauty and the Beast. It's a spit and dabs, that one, mate. Yeah. Very good, very good.
The lead star of Europe, by the look of it.
The one I got sent was on Twitter. Was this Steve Bruce and Larry Burns? Very, very good, very good. I'm sure that was Paul Oxley who sent us that. I also got sent this one again by Paul from last week, saying that this was the equivalent of our lineup. So there's me and Keith at the top, I think. There's Mitch, and there is Steve Hasty. So that's a rather young-looking William Hartnell. I think Keith looks like Thing. Either Keith or Mitch's Thing. I think Mitch's Thing. I think your Uncle Fester is you, and I think I'm Trip Attacker from Monkey.
Trip Attacker from Monkey, we are.
Yeah, me.
Brilliant stuff. So.
That out of.
Yeah, but that was it. That's the lookalike for this week anyway. Very good, Mitch. Very good as always. We'll be back with another.
What a great player, though. What a great player, Kevin Kilcline.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
We'll be back with one of them next week. Yep, don't forget, if you've got any lookalikes, don't forget to send us them, and you can send them on to us on our social media accounts or on Facebook. Just ping them over and we'll try and get the best ones out there. Lots of tweets coming in. Stu says, the dirty Premier League have turned me off football almost as much as Mike Ashley. All these dirty, greedy businessmen and women have ruined the game. Tim Kern says, potentially, we're like a battleship moored off Tynemouth waiting to get up the Tyne, then boom, the so-called Big Six. Better take note. Speaking of boats moored off coasts, MBS, Keith's he's moving into town, isn't he? He's moored off. Is it Cornwall?
Cornwall,
he's off Cornwall, but it's that big. It's got a. Well, last time I was on it, it's got a helicopter landing pad, which when the helicopter's not on it, changes to a golf driving range.
Yes.
I mean, that's just unbelievable. It's. Yeah. I think I'm told it's 9 stories high for inside and out, and it's unbelievable. Pegasus, they call it, but it's like nothing on earth. But then again, if you've got that kind of money, you can have what you want.
And did it take long to get there, Keith?
It didn't take me long to get there. It took us less time to get chucked off when I tried to get on it.
Well, according to the chat, Spenny's on there drinking red wine.
Well, I would be. Have you seen his video? Have you seen him and
Mr. Blasio as well? Yeah. Why is it there, though, guys? Why is it in Cornwall?
Well, according to someone on Twitter, it was so he could have a meet with Ashley, because I mean, it would be dead easy for Ashley to go down country, being unknown and being a kind of size that would fit in, and go to the dock and check in and go across to the boat, and there'd be no press watching that boat, would there? And they just get on there and have a meeting.
I mean,
and somebody said, "What do you think he's having a meeting?" I said, "What about?" I said, "The price is agreed. Ashley hasn't got a club to sell. He's gone to court to try and get a club to sell. And in the meantime, what does MBS need to do?"
Yeah. He couldn't. He couldn't land his helicopter on it either because the bloody plane spotters would be all over that.
Exactly.
I mean, to be straight, lads. I mean, the reason why it's there, from what I understand, is that in June there's the G8 meeting in Cornwall. Okay, so you've got all the heads of state from the G8 plus the EU and guests, and often the guests come from the Middle East. So whether or not there's the potential for Mohammed bin Salman to be a guest at the G8 meeting in Falmouth in June 8th, I think it is. I think it's the 11th to the 13th of June. So maybe the yacht's just down there. Just, I'm going to use the phrase testing the water, just seeing what it's like, making sure, because ultimately he's not going to stay in a hotel on the strip in Falmouth, is he? You know, I don't think.
Why?
I think he's going to go to his yacht moored off
to B&B.
You know, well, it could be, yeah, maybe, you know, but seriously, I think we'll look into stuff, and there's so much goes on, and you know, the simple answer is he's not there meeting anybody. He's not on the boat, you know. So all this sort of flack that's flying around, or whatever you want to call it, and it's chaff. It's stuff being thrown out there, and we'll go right back to what was said right at the very start, which is there's a spat going on between David Cameron and the PM, and David Cameron's been caught out, and now David Cameron and his PR team are fighting back, and they're throwing stuff at Boris, and Boris's team's throwing stuff. So it's Team Boris, Team David, and the two of them are fighting away, and the press from whichever newspaper supports them the most are throwing stories out about the opposite person. And we are caught up in it, and it's then you get the silly stories like, oh, there's a yacht appeared. Oh, it's got a helicopter landing pad. Oh, it's off the coast of Cornwall. Oh, Cameron's got a place in Cornwall. Oh, Boris has been down to Cornwall. You know, yeah. This is where the whole thing, and we're guilty of it ourselves. I'm sure as fans we're guilty of it. We put two and two together. Sometimes we make 5, sometimes we make 6, sometimes we make 7. You know, and I think that now we've got the press doing exactly the same, and certainly the sports press, and they're scrambling around because the sports press aren't talking to the proper political guy. And the political guys are throwing something out there, and they're not even giving the bone to the sports guys. And the sports guys are scrambling around, going, "Oh, there might be something in this. There might be something in this," you know. And then you'll get Luke doing one thing, and you'll get Liam doing another, and then you'll get George Corkin doing something, and then you'll get Simon Bird throwing his political weight into it, and so it goes on. And it's just, you know. I went for a walk with a dog today. I didn't realise the poor little thing. He's only got short legs. His legs are even shorter now because I just carried on walking because I had the music. And I was just thinking, I've just got to get away. I've got to get away from all this, you know. But God, it's just I've got a show to do this afternoon, man. I've got to calm down.
We're going to have to talk football at some point, but we do need to mention we'd not be doing the takeover justice if we didn't mention our friend Nick DeMarco once again coming out with these cryptic messages and fish supper last night from locally caught fresh seafood. I made some scallops with leeks followed by a rich mussel soup. The last mussels till September. #food, #seafood, #seafood lover, and #cooking. There was a lot of responses to it. Unify the town.
No mention of Cornwall.
No mention of Cornwall. No, not yet. But Unify the Toon, and I will give them a shout out. Toon Unify @ToonUnify did a fantastic thread on NUFC Takeover. I retweeted it and, under the #NUFC, and it's well worth a read if you haven't read it. It puts it in layman's terms. David Tweed had a good decoding it. He said last night was the last supper and all is done. He's capitalised on the Premier League leaks to the government and has taken a long break until September. Well deserved. So yeah, as always, Mitch, lots of detective work going on by our fan base who are, going, never mind takeover crazy. They've been hit with COVID and had to stay indoors for 12 months. But I mean, it's just another part of the merry-go-round, and Nick DeMarco is certainly giving us some cryptic clues, isn't he?
I think so. I think some of the things he does is exceptionally deliberate. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Some of those black and white photography things he eyes out, and the hashtags he puts with it, and the descriptions he puts with it. There's certainly clues in there, and the fact he started answering some of the and replying to some of the fans on occasion as well. He's obviously loving it. It's been one of the highlights of the last year for me. Is that I've always known we had a fantastic, rich, diverse, and intelligent fan base, but by God, we've got some amazing people who can track planes and decode and undecode pictures and solve puzzles, and Inspector Clouseau and Miss Marple eat your bloody heart out. It's fantastic. I love it. Absolutely love it. That's the content I'm here for these days. But it's, in my opinion, Nick DeMarco knows exactly what he's doing with some of these tweets. I've got no doubt about it.
Yeah, no, he does, Keith. And, for me, it's been great to see him interacting with the supporters, following some of the supporters. And but yeah, he's doing what nobody else is doing, which I feel is he's certainly not breaching any confidences. He's just letting us all know what goes on.
No, he's I'm lucky enough to know him. He's a cracking fella, but he plays it by the book, and I've got to absolutely be respect his position. If I talk to him outside of that, he talks to us as a QPR fan, and he's got a brilliant personality. Not only is he the best at what he does in the sports world, he is very humble, and he's very open. And what he's done is he's took all the fans to his heart, and he said today that what he wants to do is, when this is over, he wants to come to Newcastle for a couple of days, take a game in, and then go and photograph some of the area. And you can imagine him. One of the guys on there, I think it was Mark, turned around and said it'd be brilliant if you got up to Bamber and places like that. It's one of the few places in the world where you can go 2 miles from any place in the northeast into Greenbelt, into beautiful areas. There's not many parts of, certainly when you go from sort of Leeds through to London, there's probably nowhere like Newcastle for doing that. And the whole region, Durham, Northumberland, is just unique. And he's set his heart, and he told me that he wants to come up, and celebrate when he gets home. But he's got a big job to do in the meantime, and he has a great foil in Shahid Fatima, because she is the ultimate professional person, more private and more by the book. But I wouldn't like her coming after us with a sword, I tell you. And she's I don't know, got an equally massive reputation. I sometimes think she doesn't get the publicity or the credit for what she does. But if somebody was taking me to court, and I've been in court cases and was questioning me on Middle Eastern ownership, separation, and the structure of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, I'd rather it was somebody other than Shahid Fatima. So I just think they're a brilliant team, and what they do doesn't surprise us. Shahid will be in the background doing a lot of the clever work, a lot of the research, and Nick at the forefront of me. He's a great front guy, and he showed it, and he is a brilliant bloke. That's all I want to say.
Yeah. That's fine. John Brown making the point about the AJ Fury fight potentially being in Saudi. He says, obviously nobody from the EPL or anyone from the top 6 clubs and anyone from BN Sports will be attending due to the Saudis stealing money from illegal streaming. It is a valid point, that, John. If it does end up there, which I'm sure it will do, I'm sure they won't be there. And Colin Wilson asks a very interesting question, Steve, and that is, does MBS's yacht have a revolving dance floor?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, like the boat.
Yes, it does.
Inside it'll be just like the boat, won't it? There'll be
full of asbestos.
Big disco ball and stinking of diesel.
I have to ask Steve Bennett,
by the way.
I have to ask Steve Bennett, who's out in Saudi at the minute, if he's ever put a revolving dance floor in any of the MBS projects he's worked on before. You can probably answer in the chat if he's around.
Sure he will.
Yeah, sure he will. Okay, it's, as always, on to another one of our segments. Always a lot to cram in. This one is Steve Hastie's. Because we've always got lots to talk about, there's been a bit of a backlog of these, and I've siphoned a few out, and as always, probably got them in completely the wrong order. But Steve sits there and reads them out very calmly, but always knows that I've got them in the complete wrong order. So only got a few selected. This one was from Spenny. Last week, after someone had, of course, had put a couple of letters into some of our sponsors, but I thought that was really good. I thought that was really good. When you look at social media, Steve,
that's brilliant, isn't it? You know, you didn't think you'd look like your profile photo. It sounds classic. Have you been on a few dates like that, Keith?
No, I'll be going on a few though.
Spenny, that's an absolute classic, that, mate. Well, I'd forgotten all about it. This one was great.
Oh yeah, look at that! First game back at St James's Park with a big cabbage leaf.
Brilliant, that one, John Winterburn. Absolute nice classic, one. Son. This one.
Oh, this was a reply to Greg. A great trust board meeting tonight. Member update email to land tomorrow. A big week ahead for NUFC Trust. And David Gill said, "It's not an interview with a notorious criminal, is it?"
Needless to say, David Gill is still waiting for a reply.
Exactly. Sean Whitten repartee, absolutely superb.
This one, I think, sneaked in as tweet of the week, mate.
This is Jess. I mean, she was asked, has Steve Wraith claimed that he's won the Grand National yet?
Steve, brilliant.
Well done, congratulations. And Paul Oxley, somebody's put together the photograph of Steve as the champion jockey of the National last week. Steve, you've been getting some stick for doing absolutely nothing. You've been getting some stick. You've been away all week, and there's more stick coming your way this week than ever before. It's just like amazing.
Can I tell you
how do you do it?
Well done to Jess. Well done to Jess from Gallagher's Shots. And well done to Paul Oxley for knocking that up.
That's good. Good little bit of banter, a little bit of humour, a little bit of sort of inter-podcast humour bouncing, one way.
Well, put it this way, it was enough for us to unblock us, so there we go. Which of course I got hammered from pillar to post for doing as well. But that's your tweet of the week. Well done, Steve.
Well done.
Well, shall we talk about football? Maybe let's talk a little bit about football. Steve, we'll come to you first. Let's. You already kicked it off. We've got 4 points out the last two games, and with Fulham on a collapse, it seems. The only team that people seem to be worried about on social media at the minute is West Brom, and I think they're too far behind. I do think they're too far behind. I think they've put together their run too late.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked those extra 2 points that Bruce Thorpe had after thinking it would beating Spurs. That would have been useful, if we'd been another 2 points clear. But I mean, this is Big Sam at his best, isn't it? This is what Big Sam's famous for. Dragging a team that is absolutely hit the floor and turned around. Basically told them they're all rubbish. They're getting relegated. Convinced them they're getting relegated, and then taking all the pressure off them, and then to start to win. So that's what's happening there. But going back to our game, what a great 5 minutes! What an absolutely brilliant 5 minutes that was. His substitution brings the two strikers off. He picks two new strikers on. Shelby picks the ball up. The ball moves out. We get a lovely little sort of run. How many weeks have we been saying, get to the byline? Get the ball, get to the byline, pull the ball back, find the space. Very similar to the goal that Willock scored in his first game. Get the ball to the byline, get the ball in the box, get the ball to the edge of the box, pulling it back. All the defenders, and what you had with ASM was you had three defenders tracking him straight away. As soon as he came on, the first thing that Burnley did with that excellently organised team that Burnley are, with a manager who everybody goes on about as being absolutely perfect, brilliant, what a guy. First thing they did was they dropped off 5 yards. Couldn't handle the fact that somebody was going to start to run at them. Didn't know where they were going. Three of them tracked back. He lays the ball back. Murphy, slot, nice little chip over the keeper, because that's what it was, just a little ping ball. There we are, back in the game. 5 minutes later, Shelby, Nice little dinky pass through. ASM runs with the ball. 2 central defenders, back. Drops the shoulder, he turns, he drops the shoulder, and he slots it in the bottom corner. Within those 5 minutes, the game was completely turned. And for me, it turned out, I think it said that Burnley had more shots on target, or more shots in that game than any other game, or more attempts on goal, rather, than any other game they'd had in the Premier League ever. But for me, it showed you what a one-dimensional team they were. And I was like, honestly, I thought in the first half, the movement, they were great. I mean, they made our central defenders look absolutely awful. But we suddenly, in the second half, we suddenly combated that. We suddenly clicked. We had outlet balls. We had Wilson, who probably didn't look as though he was ready to play a full game, perfectly honest, and I was surprised that he came on when he did. But what we had him moving and making space, and he didn't have to run that fast to make the space because he had ASM alongside him, who just absolutely, put panic into that Burnley back four, and they just couldn't handle it. They could not handle it, and you know what? I thought we were good for 3 points by the end, because I thought we defended quite stoically after that. I thought we looked all of a sudden that we created a bit of shape. We had a little bit of shape that we didn't have in the first half, which I was impressed with. Right at the kickoff, I don't know about you guys, but I was baffled by the formation. I was baffled. I couldn't work out whether we were playing a back four or a back three or a back five. But at the end of the day, it's the sharp end of the season. It didn't matter whether we had a back three, a back four, or a back five. What mattered was we walked away from Turf Moor with 3 points. Mm. That's the key for me. And I was absolutely jumping for joy when that final went.
Yeah, Mitch, it was great, wasn't it? I mean, I think, Match Day Live. Before coming on that, Gary Milligan, I'll lose this, Mitch. You'll appreciate this. It's his dad joke. He says, Edge and Bono walk into a bar. Barman says, not you two again.
Oh.
Dog shit. Brilliant. It was good to jump up. It was good to jump up and down in my living room and wave me rattle around. It was good. It was just a good feeling, wasn't it? Because as well, it was a proverbial 6-pointer, and we've been crapping them this season.
Yeah, and I've hammered that knacker this season quite rightly, but he got something right in that game. The timing of those substitutions was fantastic. It was perfectly done. It was the right moves at the right time with the right personnel onto the pitch and off. I think also credit to our backline and our keeper, because we had this period about 5 minutes either side of half time where we were defending corners relentlessly. And they were pinging these horrible balls which sort of like land just underneath the crossbar in the middle of the 6-yard box, and that just causing chaos. And I think Dubravka and the back line held their line and held their nerve very, very well, and they haven't had enough credit for that for me. I think the other thing as well for ASM's for the second goal, if you look at the run Wilson makes there, that's what creates the space for ASM to take the shot. Because the two centre-backs, me and Tarkovsky, are suddenly like, oh, hang on, what do we do? Where do we go? Where do we go? And that moment of hesitation was what allowed ASM to cut inside and get onto his left foot and hit the shot. And that run, that movement that he made, that natural number 9 movement that he makes, was key to that goal for me. And so that's what he brings on. Yeah, Steve's right. He didn't look ready for half a game, let alone a full game, for me. And I think it might be a risk to start him this week as well. But let's see. Only the manager will make that decision, I guess, with his medical team, who he probably ignores like everybody else anyway. But you got to give the credit for the substitutions at the right time and for the movement that Wilson made for the goal, and for a backline holding steady against like Steve said, a one-dimensional Burnley team that really, once they'd wasted their best chances, that was it. They were spent. And once we went 2-1 up, they were never coming back into it.
No.
It really did knock the stuffing out of them.
Yeah, big shout out to our sponsors, Spider VPN, who've been with us for the last 3 months for your internet security. Give them a shout. Also, a big shout out to Arcot Interiors. Get onto them for your wonderful kitchens. And basically, they've come on board this month and thoroughly enjoying the sponsorship. They did help out Ian Mearns, if you remember, a couple of months ago as well. And there you go. That gives you an idea of what you could expect. ArcotInteriors.com. It could be. 01912658663. Enquiries at arcot.org.uk. Ian had no complaints, said they were absolutely brilliant. So if Ian recommends them, they've got to be good. qtechshop.co.uk, they make pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend. And of course, big supporters of the show. And Jab Signature, the man guilty as charged for doing our flyers and making us look absolutely ridiculous week in, week out. And Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner. Just click on it and that's it. Subscribe to the channel. You can set a reminder for all your favourite shows. And hit the like button, which is the little thumb, just to like the video. Hit share to share it to your social media. And drop into the comments. There's plenty of people in there tonight. A great bunch of people. Over 790 people watching live. So big shout out to everybody tonight. And hope you all have a great weekend and are enjoying your little bit of freedom. And tomorrow, don't forget the food bank, NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk. The match day bucket will be in operation. Great concept brought together again by QTech. But NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk, the match day bucket. If you want to donate something to the food bank, then that's how you do it until we can all get back up to the ground. And Keith, let's talk a little bit about that. It looks as if the Sheffield United game and the Fulham game, we are going to have fans back in. Hopefully it'll all be sorted for us. But 10,000 fans, they reckon, will be going back to St James's Park. Would you like to be one of them?
I'd love to be. I expect that, might get a fancy seat. I've been invited up to the club when it gets back open, so I'd look forward to that. I've got a mate called, I'm going to shout out for a lad called Ed Jansen, who's a Utrecht in Holland fan. He's dialed in from Holland tonight, so I just want to have a shout out to him. But he's just sent us a message. He said, because bear in mind, Dutch is his first language, his second language is English, but he's just saying tonight, he just said, Steve Reyes just turned around and said, when the show finished, I think Steve was referring to his haircut, on that video, the ginger hair. Steve said, I feel like going knocking the back doors in.
Yeah.
And he says, you might want to rephrase that, because in Holland, he says, and I just said back saying it has the same meaning over here as well. So when you played back, Steve, I think you said you fancy knocking the back doors.
Smashing the back door in, I think I said, yeah.
I did nearly say something, but I bit me lip like I've got to say.
Can I just say, smashing the back doors in, Steve, has the same meaning where I come from, man.
I was referring to me glass door, which is at the left-hand side of it, of course. So that is what I was... Sorry for any breakdown in communication to any Dutch viewers.
But the same Steve Acey just goes, Steve's had a lot of stick while he's been in London. And they say, I've had 2 texts saying, not surprised with the things he's going out with. Just hope his back door stay intact.
Crowds coming back into the ground. So, yeah, you'd like to do it. Yeah, I think most people would. It's going to be interesting to see how they choose to do it, Keith. I think that's going to be the thing where, if I haven't got enough to fall out about, people will be falling out about that.
Where would you put them and how would you make the noise travel best? And would you put them high up? Obviously, by go on.
Keith, Steve sent me something when early on in the whole COVID thing, he was chatting with guys at the club about fans returning and how many might be able to return. And it's like 3D chess. You move somebody one place and then you cannot put somebody there and then you cannot use the end. It's just super complicated, and then you're going to get into the loyalty point Uber fan wars, aren't you, about who can come in and who can't. It's going to be pretty damn messy.
Equally though, if it's how you say it, that means you're going to put 1, miss 2, 1, miss 2, 1. You've got to stop and realise you're going to open every part of the ground up to achieve that 10,000, and
Yeah.
the stewardship and the cost on turnstile entry,
Well,
everything else. You're going to have the same costs as if you had 50,000 on the ground, but you're going to have 10,000 revenue.
You've then also got things like floor to bathrooms, floor to food and beverage outlets. Are you allowed to have food and beverage outlets? Are you allowed to leave your seat until half time or not? And all these things that, I mean, Steve probably tell you more than me. We bounced this around again. We're going back a year about when we were bouncing this around, Steve, wasn't it?
Exactly. I mean, the first lockdown, which when it looked as though we're coming out of it, and the club held a Zoom meeting, and a number of fans were invited into that meeting. Primarily people who had perhaps been involved in the original fans forum that disappeared in 2019. Thomas from NUFC, NUST was on alongside me, and I mean some of the things that we're talking about. I mean, it was the pitch of the stand. At the time, you had to have 2 meters between individuals. So there was a 2 meter scan around you. So you couldn't sit within 2 meters of someone. And the pitch of St. James's Park and the pitch of the stands meant that there could be nobody directly in front of you. So there was always going to be at 1 seat in front and 1 seat behind empty. It also meant there was at least 1 seat alongside you going to be empty. The aisles had to be kept clear. So you couldn't have a seat, somebody sitting on the end of an aisle. We have a ground that is full of aisles. We have a ground that has so many aisles, it's unbelievable. So when you come to that, you couldn't have someone sitting on the end of an aisle. As I say, there was nobody in front of you, nobody behind you, nobody alongside you. There was a one-way system in, there was a one-way system out. Into the, let's say, use the example of where we sit, Mitch, which is in the 1892. There was no catering facility. You went straight into the ground, into the stadium itself. No sitting around, no seating area where you could actually sit, which we all know there's a nice seating area that you can sit and have a chat and have a beer and a pie. And then there was no catering facility going to be laid on. You were straight into the ground, straight to your seat, preferably 45 minutes before kickoff, because they wanted everybody sitting, and that was it. The toilets, a one-way in, a one-way out, which probably meant that there was going to be one door. Let's say, again, let's use the example of the 1892. You'd go in a one way, and you'd come out at the far end and walk back along. Remember in that the big long aisles that come along the Milburn, there'd be nobody sitting in the front seats of the Milburn. So that they would be, again, because people are travelling, and that's the way in and out. They wanted to stagger the leaving time. So there was that. That was another obstacle in the path of people. You weren't just going to leave the ground as you did. So the configuration and all of that taken into consideration meant that the ground could hold approximately 7,000. Okay. If they changed it slightly and they allowed you to sit in what was supposed to be a bubble of 6, then they said that you could, with the restriction, you could probably manage a maximum of 17,000. The issue then came of how you created the bubble of 6. Was it a family bubble or was it a group of mates bubble? It couldn't be a group of mates bubble unless you lived in the same house. So straight away, that was right. So how did that work? So it was all right for a family of 6, or
it's all right for us as the young ones. We all live in the same house, and that's fine.
Yeah, we're all right. There's a photo where we're in. You know, we just got to find another family of 2 to join us. You know. But these are the sort of things you had to go. Then you had the issue of how you allocated that 7,000 or that 17,000, how you chose them, how those people, for example, that their names were going to have to be on the ticket. You were going to have to provide identification to prove that you were the name on the ticket. The ticket was going to have to be printed in the name. And so it went on and on and on. And these were all the things that have been... This wasn't the club, by the way. Don't blame the club for this. This was what had came from the Premier League. This and the Premier League were getting advice from the government. They were getting advice from whoever was advising the government on, and I presume it was the health officials, etc., etc. And this was when we thought we're coming out of things round about October time, I think. So this was the plan for in fact, it was even earlier than that. It was the plan for the start of the season. But of course, we all know that it didn't happen. We all know that the restrictions carried on, and we're still stuck in them now. All of a sudden, they seem to have changed. You know, like there's 4,000 at Wembley at the weekend for 2 games as test games. There's no under 18s allowed at Wembley. Now, is that telling you that when eventually they're going to let the 10,000 in, does that mean there's going to be nobody under 18?
That's how I would read that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll not get in.
Well, exactly. Yeah. You're going to struggle, Keith. You're going to struggle. We're all right. We're all right. But
We'll go first in lockdown.
but this gives you an idea. So what we did, and I sat. Well, I'm saying I sat. I wrote my opinion on it, and I passed it to Thomas, and I passed it to the rest of the people. And we put some ideas forward to the club to see whether or not there was workarounds or there was something that could be suggested that would be acceptable to the health and safety authorities who were advising the clubs. I mean, we're sitting with Steve Story from the club, who had responsibility for this, along with, at the time, I'm not sure, I think it was Kate Bradley, who was taking the lead on this. Now, Kate's left the club. Kate's gone and got a job working in UK sport. So, and her role hasn't been taken on, by the way. So her role is now being shared out.
Yeah. So
again, there's a turnaround and there's a change there at the football club that people may or may not have known. So this gives you an idea of the nightmare scenario. Then we got into, so once you've done all that, who is going to go? How are you going to select them? And you'd then, as you mentioned, Neil, do you go on loyalty points? Now, straight away, people went, whoa, hang on a minute. I don't go to away games. Are you now saying that I'm not as loyal a fan as somebody who goes to away games?
Right.
So that's a question that still needs to be answered and was never answered. It was thrown out but never answered.
No, of course.
You know, then it's like
we've now got a matter of weeks for the club to come up with some sort of system.
Yep.
And they're going to get it wrong. No matter what they do, they're going to get it wrong.
There was no vaccinations. There isn't a vaccine passport. We all, anyone who's had a vaccine knows that they got a little slip of paper with a name on, and it says when they got the first vaccine, and then it's going to be filled in when they get the second. But there's no
Mine's electronic.
That. Sorry?
Mine's electronic.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, typical bloody Dubai.
Delivered by drone.
Other the other point that Keith made before as well is about cost of police and cost of managing all of this, because you know, let's go down the leagues. You all know, I know somebody at Stevenage quite well, and they were told as part of the same consultation when you were doing that with our club, the most they could have was 400. And the feedback I got from them was, we're staying shut.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. It is not worth it for 400 fans in the ground. We'll fill our executive boxes, and the people who pay to use those, we'll let them come in because we can control and police them very easily. And everybody else, I'm sorry, it is not worth our while to open the gates for 400 fans. And every club will be doing this on a club-by-club, individual basis, depending on what their ground's like, what the facilities in their grounds are like, what it's like to police them, what access to the ground is like, how do you get in, how do you get out, etc., etc., etc. Clusterfuck's the word that springs to mind.
The other bits that were mentioned was that you had to be wearing a mask all the time. There should be no singing in the ground. You didn't know where you were going to...
no singing. No singing and no shouting.
Yeah,
Don't you dare get excited or carried away.
Yeah, you could have a season ticket in level 7 and you could be given a seat in the Platinum Club. Do you pay the level 7 amount, or do you play the platinum cub, the 64 quid as opposed to 27? Right. So there's that. What about if you're a junior and then your seat was only a fiver? What about the disabled fans? What facility was going to be, and what allocation to be given to people that are disabled fans who naturally want to watch football at St James's Park, as they have done, Representative Nusder exactly and such like. And what we were told at that point was, we'll have a separate conversation about them. So in other words, we haven't thought about that yet.
Yes, we haven't thought about that yet.
Oh, yeah, right. Then there was the question of the lifts. This is another one, right? So we've got lifts that take you up to level 7 that some people like to use and some people want to use. You can only have 2 in the lift at a time, but if there's 6 you go into a match, then you've got to stand in the queue. How long is it going to take for the lift to come up and down? Bearing in mind it's St James's Park and the lift hasn't been used for God knows how long, the chances are
no fans.
But if you're in a bubble of 6, can you not get in the lift together?
No, you can't. No, you can't. Because no Newcastle have probably put a lift operator in as well.
You probably got to go up in a rope now. The ground's been left in that much of a disrepair.
He's actually going to use his helicopter and he's going to drop wind.
We've got half an hour left. We haven't got enough time. We're going to give Steve's clue. You will have seen the clue last week, which I've wiped from the system, which I'll have to get off John. We'll recap at the end of it. But this is your second clue. Another picturesque photograph of the Tyne, which I didn't take. With the words or the letters PSG, which I presume stands for a football club in the French league. So there you go. That is your second clue. Jot that down with the clue that you got last week and keep them together until the end of the month. And we will have another prize up for grabs from John from QTech. Completely un-football related, but a bit of shock news from the acting world and those who were interested in Peaky Blinders. Helen McCrory's passed away, age 52, cancer, battled with cancer. Awful, that tragic news, and what a great actress. And obviously those of you who watch the Harry Potter films, I've been watching them with a Ben recently, plays a big part in Harry Potter as well, but apparently she was battling cancer. She's passed away at the age of 52, so crying shame that, and thoughts with her family. I know you're all sitting there eagerly awaiting it, so
here's the card.
I suppose I better play it.
Here's the card.
Yep, Troll of the Week. As always, lots of abuse thrown my way, even though I wasn't here. Some of it good-hearted, some of it banter, some of it absolutely awful. I picked two out in particular. This one, which I'd forgotten about last week, but I think it's worth a mention because they're constantly spammed in this chat that we have on here for a while. This is from Brandon von Boven. Brandon at NUFC. TV. I always felt that was a rather inappropriate name for a YouTube channel. That was me, just because of the political connotations. But King of NUFC, YouTube, my ass, know your place, mate. Now, this was in reference to, I think, us pulling in 5,000 people for the match watch along. And the Magpie channel on that particular day pulled in 8.7. Well done. I don't sit and look at them. I've never, ever said that I'm the king of YouTube. However, I will just show you that, which is this month's stats. 2,768 extra subscribers, 489,000 total views, 6 million minutes watched. I'll rest my case on that, Brandon von Boven. Whoever you are, and this is the winner. This is your fan who I don't follow at all. And Jeff Carter put out a quest for people to put comments underneath a photograph, and it was Matt Ritchie, of course, having an argument with somebody, and he goes, Matt Ritchie to Steve Wraith, who put you in charge of NUFC Twitter, you baldy. Yeah, so. You're a fan. I've seen you having a little pop at us now and then. You were kind enough to copy us in on this particular occasion. So well done, mate. You've got your 5 minutes of fame on the channel, and you are my Troll of the Week. People go mad for that music. It's absolutely brilliant, and people's pets go mental, etc. So, but yeah, good stuff. All right, we're going to start looking ahead to the game tomorrow. Big match, Keith. West Ham. It's usually a game I look forward to. It's got a bit of history, of course. Go way back into the 80s. We talk about the rather unsavoury incident with a petrol bomb, which of course created a bit of an atmosphere between the two firms. We had our enemy in the Bender squad and the Gremlins. West Ham ICF, quite synonymous with giving us a run for our money down at West Ham. So it's got a bit of history on and off the pitch. There's been some infamous games as well, of course. The live TV game on ITV, I think, when we won 4-0. Newcastle were in the rock bottom of the old First Division and managed to turn on a wonderful performance and win 4-0. But we've seen some right humdingers over the years between them, and of course West Ham will always hark back to that treacherous night down at Upton Park, the old ground, when we ended up having 3 goalkeepers. When Martin Thomas got injured and Chris Hedworth went in. Chris Hedworth got injured and Peter Beardsley went in, and we got beat 8-1. Alvin Martin bagging a hatful that night. So yeah, it's a game which has probably lost a little bit over the last few years, but yeah, a big game all the same, and get something out of tomorrow, continues the good run.
I think it's a big game for me. I've got a lot of mates who are West Ham fans. We're all Chelmsford lads, Sean Kirby, Kev Stevens and lads. And they're just like us. They support a team that's never had the right to be there. It's always fought. They've always competed in cups. They've always been up and down. So I have a lot of affinity with West Ham. I think it's my London team, way ahead of Tottenham's and Arsenal's and Chelsea's. But we play them tomorrow at a time when they're on a complete high. Do I think we'll get a result? Yeah, I do. I think it'll be 3-2 to Newcastle tomorrow. I don't see us... They break so quick that I don't see you stopping them from scoring. And Mr. Oxley's asked what the Mystic Megs predict this week, because that I called the Wolves player, Traore, to score in that goal. And then I called 2-1 last week, so I'm on a treble, and I think it's going to be 3-2 to Newcastle. I think we're going to come. I think we're going to come from 2-1 down and win 3-2. There's something I wanted to say about last week, which is quite relevant though. Is I wonder whether Bruce should have started that 11. Everyone's saying, "Oh, he did well," and Mitch said, he's done brilliant to bring the subs on. But think about them 2 goals. That was a total opportunity strike by Murphy. And when ASM turned them back the other way before he put it in, that ball missed that kid's boot by Midgey's knacker. So what I'm saying to you is there was an element of luck and opportunism in how we got back in that game. So I just wonder whether Newcastle were lucky in sending that side out to start. And I said tomorrow, will win tomorrow depend on the team he starts. I mean, you know what I want. I don't want Shelby to start, but we all know he will. We all know he'll be captain. But when I watched that game, people were criticising Longstaff. He didn't hide in the first half, and he was brilliant in the second. He never hid. I thought Murphy was brilliant. I thought Almeida was brilliant. And you can't knock what ASM did. He was absolutely magical when he come on. But I question whether we should have started with that team. So against West Ham tomorrow, I want to start with the team that you would end with. I'd rather start with a great team against somebody who's the form team in the Premier League. West Ham, they could have been well ahead of Leicester. And to butcher a Leicester side, somebody said to me it could have been 5-0 at the start of that West Ham Leicester game. So why start with a team that they're going to hang on? And I think for too long, Brooks has done that this season. I'd rather he started with Wilson and with St. Maxim and with Almiron. And then, if they got tired, or if you got ahead, or if the game was out of reach, bring them off. Rather than start with a team to hang on and then bring your bullets on at the end. Can I just ask you one question? Because somebody sent us this week, and I'm frightened we don't get in before the end. Somebody asked us a question, I think it's very relevant, and I want to ask it to Steve Hasty first, is if the pledge that went out, which was so well signed up to, had been collected with a view to raising enough money to pay Steve Bruce off, how do you think the collections would have gone so far?
I think it'd have hit 3.5 million. I honestly do. What a great idea.
Mitch, you sat there now. If the pledge was to pay Steve Bruce off, right, and it had been done, say, 6 weeks ago, what do you think would have happened?
I think the same as Steve. I think people would have gone, yeah, we'll go for that. I think there'd have been people hiring stuff in left, right, and centre without question.
Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, I do agree. I mean, look, I sent a message to an ex-player to pass on to Steve Bruce last weekend because we've, criticised him, and rightly so, for his entire tenure at the club. But I actually felt that it was, worthy of saying to him, look, well done. You've had all of this to put up with. I know you haven't had fans in the ground, but look, well done. You got it right the last 2 weeks. And I know it was passed on because I trust that person to do that. And I got a message back saying, just pass on me thanks. So look, for me, I can understand where you're coming from, where your friend's coming from by saying that. But I think, look, we've got to be realistic, and we're going to have somebody on. I think the trust have put forward Warren Barton for us next week, so we'll have Warren Barton on for the pledge. I've asked for somebody from the trust, though. I want somebody for the trust to come on because I want our viewers to be able to ask questions of the trust. I don't want don't just want to have Warren on. I know Warren, and I know what Warren's going to say. He's somebody who's literally just gives a go ahead with Ian Mearns and the others to to say where the money goes. We need somebody from the trust on to answer some questions, and there's plenty of questions people want answers to. And I know they've been on other podcasts, but I think I'm hoping that we'll get somebody else as well as Warren. So we'll wait and see. But I'm more than happy to have Warren on next week. But wait to hear from Mark Corby as to whether we get anybody else on from the trust. So let's wait and see. But yeah, I get where you're coming from, Keith. Where your friend's coming from. I think it's all just going to be a big donation to charity, mate. That's ultimately what it is for me.
It will be, but the question was if it was done 6 weeks earlier and it was to pay Bruce off, what impact would it have had? And like Mitch and Stephen said, massive.
Yeah,
so
I think you would have hit the 3.5 million target that you were looking for.
Yeah,
Can you imagine if in a situation in world football where a bunch of fans
pay the manager off
3.5 million to pay the manager off to allow the football club to bring in somebody better
to steal.
Now, it's a joke. It's hypothetical. It didn't happen, but it's an interesting concept that maybe you can imagine South American and Italian clubs might suddenly jump at. Having said that, we know that we're stuck, and I know where you're coming from, Steve, because we're stuck with Steve Bruce until the end of the season. So we've got to get behind the team. We've got to get behind Steve Bruce. I know that it sticks in a lot of people's throats, but we have to because he's the manager of the football club. The owner said he's not going to shift him. We've got a big game tomorrow. We've listened to what he said. His press conferences have been a little bit calmer. He looks a little bit calmer. Unfortunately, things will beat Tottenham, but my mum in the old people's home probably thought we'd beat Tottenham as well, but we didn't. We drew. He's getting on a bit. He's nearly as old as me, so he's bound to make mistakes now and again. Let's give him his dues. But it's important, we've got hardly any games left. I mean. Let's talk about West Ham. He's apparently said in the press conference he's meeting David Moyes later on. He's going for a chat with him. He's breaking his bubble. He's going to have a chat with Moyes. He's going to nip down to Quayside. And obviously, Moyes staying down there. I can just see them walking up and down and heading along Shield Field and into the Tyne Bar and having a couple of beers. That's great. Lovely, smashing. West Ham. Of every team that West Ham have played this season. in this little run. They played Arsenal, who they went 3-0 up and they ended up drawing 3-3. They went 3-0 up against West Brom and then they capitulated and were lucky to get a 3-2. This is a West Ham team that's free scoring but so suspect at the back, and now without some key defenders again tomorrow, and we've got key attackers potentially back, and
missing a striker as well, mate.
Right, they're missing Antonio, who has been holding them together until Lingard arrived. And Lingard's given them a new dimension. He's brought the best out of Bowen, who we were linked with. We all wanted. I mean, many Newcastle fans were disappointed when we didn't buy Bowen. 12, 18 months ago when he was up for grabs from. Was it Hull? Was he at Hull? I think that's where they picked it from. So they've got a lot going for them, but they've got a. There's a weakness to them, and if we can get our strikers together, if we can put a performance in, if we can go in with a confidence that they've gone in with over the last sort of half dozen games, there's no reason why we can't beat them. And I'm like you, Keith. I'm expecting a victory. I'm expecting them to go in and put a performance in. I'm expecting Bruce and the rest of the bunch to be able to build on what we've seen over the last few weeks. The confidence of draws, the confidence then of a win, and let's keep the momentum going. And I tell you what, a win tomorrow, the pressure that they're putting on West Brom, but all just as importantly, if the results don't go their way, the pressure that's putting on Brighton above where is immense, because Brighton will not be looking at us; they'll then be looking at West Brom, and they'll start to panic as well. So this is the nature of football. This is the nature of the panic. I mean, Rice. There's another top player that they've been missing for a couple of weeks now. Maybe it's Rice, and the loss of Rice has been the reason why they've gone 3-0 up, but then ended up 3-2 in games. Let's exploit them. Let's put a team together that goes at them. Let's put a team together that can perform.
Wilson's got a good track record against these as well, Mitch. He scores goals. He scores goals against West Ham. So I'm expecting goals tomorrow.
Yeah, and West Ham remind me of us under Pardew.
Yeah,
there's a certain vulnerability that when teams find it, it gets exploited. They are overperforming. And the key stat to look at is the goal difference. You compare their goal difference to the teams around them, and that is the measure of where they're at. And so for me, that there's a vulnerability there that's there to be exploited. We're going to have to accept there's a damn good chance we're going to concede against them.
That's what I said.
Lingard's on fire at the minute. And you can't deny that. I mean, gosh, you've seen some of the goals he scored. He's in one of those zones where everything seems to go in the minute he leaves his foot. So we've got to accept that, and we'll have to go with the mindset that we're going to have to go and get something. Interesting today, Bruce's words in the press conference today were slightly different, using words like opportunity. I've not heard him use more positive words like that for a long, long time. So I don't know whether he sees, he's woken up and seen that, there's a vulnerability there to be exploited. Whether Jones has spent some time in the data room with everybody, looking at everything and saying, right, okay, we can do this. Whether he's just buoyed by the fact that Wilson's back and he's got a great record against West Ham, ASM's back and he's looking like he's already on fire again. But I think you're right. I think we're going to get goals. There's no doubt about that tomorrow.
But would you not start, Mitch, with the best 11? Would you not start with
the strongest 11? I would. I'm of a belief that's the way you should start. If they're fit and they go in. Yeah. And even if you think you're only going to get an hour out of them, you say, give us your best hour.
Yeah,
give us your best hour.
Well, let's hear what...
You shouldn't be playing catch-up. You shouldn't be playing catch-up.
Let's hear what our resident expert's got to say.
Yeah.
Hello, Steve. Hola, amigos. Newcastle play West Ham on Saturday, the early kickoff. So what does the stat book tell us about this game? Actually, the record against West Ham is pretty good. In 22 games at St. James's Park, Newcastle has 11 wins, 7 draws, and only 4 defeats. And actually, 2 of these defeats were back in '98, which means that Newcastle has lost only 2 of the last 16 games at St. James's Park against the Hammers. The 2 defeats in '98, I remember very well. The first one was Gary Speed's debut under Kenny Dalglish, and we lost 1-0. And the second one was under Ruud Gullit, and Stuart Pearce got sent off, and Ian Wright scored twice for them, and we lost 3-0. In terms of players, Callum Wilson has his best personal record against West Ham. He has scored 8 goals in 9 games. Of course, most of his goals were for Bournemouth, but still he scored in the previous game. By the way, West Ham have lost this season only once to an opponent outside the classic top 6, and this was against Newcastle in the first game of the season. So, very big chances that Newcastle does their third double of the season on Saturday.
Big thanks to Andrea, Toon Stato, and
I
Keith.
love Andrea.
I do. Keith, go on.
Reminds me how if you went to Krakow once, fantastic place to go, and we decided to go to this place called Wieliczka Salt Mines, which is some ancient salt mine out near Krakow. And the tour guide, he sounds exactly like the tour guide. I cannot listen to him without hearing English tour for your guide. It's brilliant. Love it.
Yeah, he's very confident, but he backs it up with stats, Keith. And those stats are very positive, Keith.
They are positive, but West Ham, you never would have dreamed under David Moyes would be 4th in the league. You know what I mean? It's unthinkable where they are at the minute. There's something I wanted to bring up to you tonight while I'm on. I mean, I don't want to cause trouble, but did any of you spot on Sunday when Almiron scored his goal, when St. Maxim scored his goal, and he peeled away and he did his dance? Did you notice no players came over him? And
yeah.
Did you notice one player jogged past him, not even looking at him, and jogged? One player run past Almiron when he was doing his dance, and they ran past him to take his position up. And it was the least, after such a remarkable goal, to pull back such a remarkable potential loss of points, to then get to, we're going to win 3 points, and we had no right at that stage. We didn't have any right to do that. And I'm stood there, like, just getting off the chandelier, my underpants around in the ceiling, and like, I'm as high as a kite. And I'm thinking, get in there, lad. And I'm thinking, if I was on that pitch, I'd have got him, I'd have bounced him, I'd have double somersaulted him, I'd have wet my pants. And like, nobody went over. What was going on?
If you danced like that, I would have walked past you and all, mate.
Hold on a minute. I'm not knocking no back doors in tonight, so don't go up on me with your pal upstairs. So what I'm saying is, do you not sense, I mean, I often talk to Liam about this, and do you not sense there is divisions? And I just wonder, I've never seen a player score a goal as important, executed so well, where he literally made it and executed himself. Jesus, to me, honestly.
Keith, we know there's divisions in the dressing room. We know there's divisions there, and we know that there's been divisions enough to have Lascelles to the point of talking about chucking the captaincy in, and other players saying, "Hold on, don't do this," because we know that he's going to give the captaincy to Shelby. We know 100% St. Maximin took himself back to France for his birthday without the club's knowledge, no matter what the clubs say.
I agree.
And we know he had to scramble to get the right paperwork together to get back in the country at all. And that's not a slight at him. People, when I was talking about this, people on Twitter were having a go at me, saying, "Oh, you're having a go at the ASM about this, that, and the other." I wasn't.
No.
I was having a go at the club because they had fuck all idea about what he was doing. They didn't have a clue. And then once they found out he was there, they went mental because they had to retrospectively do the paperwork while he was trying to get himself and his dad and his brother back into the country who were part of his management team, you know, and trying to do all of that on the elite sportsman's ticket. And I believe he thought he could get back in the country as an elite sportsman if he just faxed Border Patrol a copy of his contract. I mean, for God's sakes. Which he did. Yes, which he did. Yes, Steve, he did. We know he did. We've seen it. Right? We know he did. We've seen it. And that was how he tried to get back in the country as an elite sportsman. Here's a copy of me contract. Really? I mean, just typical stupid footballer behaviour. Right? Meanwhile, you've got somebody like Callum Wilson who's allowed to go back down south because the club knew what he was doing. They knew who he was going to be with. They knew who his fitness coach was. They knew how he was rehabbing and where he was rehabbing. He does everything by the book, goes down south and rehabs and comes back. Whereas you've got this daft sod flying off the home for his birthday, which, do you know what? He's injured. He's entitled to do that, but as far as I'm concerned.
He didn't go to Paris. He
went to Nice.
He went to Nice. He then went to Monaco. He then went
Nice, Monaco, and Saint-Tropez.
Work with Monaco, a club that he played one game with 5 years ago or something. You know, for God's sake, you know how we. You know, there's not. Let's not beat about the bush. Let's not. You know, there's taking the mick and there's taking the mick. So, isn't it? You know,
so there's definitely divisions in the dressing room.
So for me,
whether people feel like other players have had special treatment on the back of that, I don't know.
So when you put all this together, when you stick all this together, you've got to say, who would you start with tomorrow then? Who would you pick tomorrow?
Start with your best 11.
And that's exactly what I would.
Start with your best 11, Keith. That's what we've got to do tomorrow.
But if you're starting with your best 11, what form? What are you going with, a 5 at the back or a 4? Bearing in mind that you're playing a team that loves to counter-attack you, are you going to go with a formation that can counter-attack them? Because they're suspect at the back. Yeah. We know they're suspect at the back. We know that they're going to come at you. They know that they're going to try. So how do you combat that? Do you go with a 5, which people talk about being a 3 and 2 wing backs, or do you go with a flat back 4 and a 3 in the middle and a 3 up front, or do you go with a 4-4-2?
I'd go with a 5. I'd go to Bravke, Richie Murphy, and me 3 central defenders would be Dummett, Clark and Fernandez, even though, despite what you said tonight, I didn't think they were as solid in the first half as what you said. I thought the central defenders last week were weaker. But that's who I'd go with, because I think Richie and Murphy offer something that is way beyond the thinking of some of the other players.
Right.
I'd have a midfield of Longstaff, Willock, Almiron in the SM, and having Wilson up top. So I would, me defence. I've got Richie and Murphy there when we're being attacked, but I've also got them coming forward when we attack forward. But the one person I'd love to see come out that side is one captain called John Joe. Lost his legs.
Yeah, and I don't think you're going to see that because he's the captain and Lascelles is out. He's out for the rest of the season now. So Lascelles has passed the captain's armband to Shelby and he'll still be in. I've seen a lot of people clamouring for Willock, but I just think he'll go with the same, more or less the same team. Yeah. I think he'll go with Shelby and Longstaff in the centre of midfield again, and that's it. And if he does, we could get overrun there. We really could. That is a big worry. Right. I still think it'll be a high score. I think it'll be a high scoring game. I think it'll be a 2-2 or a 3-2. I still think there's goals galore in this, to be perfectly honest. But you never know. And Andre has given us a little bit of hope, Steve, hasn't he? Really, with his stats.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, if stats wins games, then you think, well, we're going to have an absolute stormer of a match tomorrow. I like the sound of that team that Keith talked about.
Yeah, me too.
It's a three at the back with the two wing backs. It's one man up front, but it's really three because you've got Amigos and ASM. The question mark would be whether your holding midfield is strong enough against a physical, mobile West Ham, and that means that you're. But you know what? I always think when you look at putting a team out, don't worry about the opposition. Go to your own strengths.
Yep.
You want your team to play to their strengths. You don't want your team to be worried about what the opposition can do to you. You want the main drive and focus of what they can do to the opposition. You're at home. You know what you're going to do when you lose the ball. You know what you're going to do when you've got the ball. And that's where good coaching comes in. That's where a good manager comes in. And that's where good team management and pitch management comes with whoever's leading the team on the pitch. And whoever your leader is, whoever's sitting there as the main central defender between Clark and Dummett and Fernandez, who's gonna take in charge of that back three? Who's gonna be the one that's gonna tell the others what to do? Because we saw in the first half with Clark and Fernandez, neither of them want to take ownership, but neither of them wanted to tell the other what they wanted to do, where they wanted to be, and that's why they both got attracted to Wood and left the vacant space, and it's also why you ended up with John Joe Shelby allowing that space to be taken on board, because when he lost the ball, we just watched Burnley players run past him for that first goal, and he didn't take ownership. He didn't take ownership of the space. He didn't look at what his teammates were doing and where they were going and take ownership and take leadership. So it's game management. It's game management from on the bench, but it's game management on the pitch, and it's leadership. And that's where I feel as though if we have a weakness, that's where it comes from. I love the idea of if we can get the mobile Miggy and the mobile Alan St. Maximum with the space that's created by Wilson. I look forward to that. I don't think it'll be as high scoring a game as you guys think. I think we could end up with again a 2-1 win, something like that. I know that's 3 goals and that's high scoring for Newcastle, but you know where I'm coming from. I don't think we're going to have a 2-2, and I think the two teams could actually cancel each other out. To be perfectly honest, because I think that's the way. It's a fascinating. I think tomorrow's a fascinating game, a really fascinating game.
Do you know? Trainson always says good things. Trainson just said John Joe Shelby will get lapped in a 100-metre sprint.
Yeah, no, he's right. Yeah, he's right. You know, getting back to me little message to Bruce as well. My message was mainly about the fact that he'd sorted those dressing room differences out, because we've talked about these fallouts. We know that there's fallouts.
Definitely.
We know from the people at the club that we speak to, and some of the stuff that we've heard is a lot worse than stuff that's got out there. And ultimately, you look at it and think, actually, fair play to you if you've actually got Matt Ritchie in a room and Sean Longstaff in a room, and you've said, look, I'll hold my hands up. Right? I just want to move on, or I was wrong. Whatever he said to get those two back on the pitch performing, I think fantastic. You know, the fact that he's managed to do that, and if he deserves one bit of credit, it's for just righting that particular wrong and getting them back firing on all cylinders.
Yeah,
Steve, you banged on and on about the mole in the dressing room. You should have just asked me, because where do I get most of my information from? The same bloody source.
Yeah.
So
is that the manager?
You know. No, interestingly, but via somebody else.
You know, next time
that's where it comes from. You know, and it's bonkers that it came to all of this. It shouldn't have came to all of this. There should have been enough leadership in our club from top to bottom to not need this, and there isn't. Where it comes back to the fact where the ghost ship with nobody at the tiller. And so things are going to happen when they happen and the way they happen. It's ridiculous.
Steve basically just turned around and said, I'll pick a better team than Steve Bruce. That's what you just said. Is there any chance when all this goes through, I can maybe be manager just for a few months to see how it goes?
Why not?
Right, well, hey, you never know. I mean, you just have a word with your contacts, Keith. You might get put it this way. There was that little interest in the job last time. You put a CV, and you never know. You could end up with
the job in the close season.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Amanda was saying you have the job between June and August.
Now I do want to finish off just to let everybody know that we will be back tomorrow, match day live, midday tomorrow. Join me and the gang as we talk you through hopefully another 3 points, and then obviously Sunday morning 10 till 10:45. I'm back with Ben Jacobs. I'm going to finish off with this, lads, and of course now that the barbers have reopened, queues are so long that the staff have actually started handing out burgers and sausages. 10 out of 10. Definitely the best barbecue I've ever been to, lads.
Tell you, could have warned us. Dear me, could have warned us about it. How weird.
Another dad joke. Another dad joke to finish. A beard trim. Another dad joke to finish the show.
Can I just say, Steve, though, keeps wanting to run the team. So now we've got supporters who want to run the boardroom and run the team. Fantastic. We're getting there.
I'll do the door on MBS's boat.
Hold on the dance floor.
There'll be a nightclub in there, so I'll just do that. Classic in there.
Revolving dance floor.
Mitch can fix the teeth if there's any bother outside. All right, great stuff, lads. As always, have a good weekend. Don't let the football ruin it. Take care, lads.
Cheers.
All the best, lads.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn.